This is Popping the Bubbl with hosts Sandra Ponce de Leon and Pete A. Turner.
My name is Paul Hainsworth. I'm the CEO here at Open Garden, and you're listening to Popping the Bubbl.
Hey, Paul. Welcome. Thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, you have a very interesting background. You've been in the mobile space for quite a while, and now you've been the CEO of Open Garden now for a couple of years. How did you end up? Tell us a little bit about your journey to get here.
Sure. So I've been working in the mobile communication space for about 15 years, a combination of software product management skills and background and general management. Working for, pretty traditional mobile operators. The last one was Sprint. I spent some time at Blackberry after that. My experience in those very kind of centralized traditional businesses led me to a desire to do something different, to really try to fundamentally change the game in the communication space. The world doesn't need another traditional mobile network provider. And with Open Garden, I saw the promise to do something really, really different and try to disrupt the space.
Very cool. So what is Open Garden? How is it disrupting the space?
The easiest way to think about Open Garden is through an analogy. It's like Airbnb for internet access. We enable, through our protocol, anybody to share their internet connection, set a price, turn that connection into a Wi-Fi hotspot, and then earn our cryptocurrency. We want millions of people to share their internet connections. And if they do, then we can really fundamentally change how people connect to the internet.
Wow.
We call it the Internet of Us.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Very cool.
I've always thought, why would you protect something you're already paying for? You're not using all of it. And or why wouldn't you partner with your neighbors to do this kind of thing? So you've actually turned it into a business.
That's exactly right. And the reason you couldn't do this before was that there's this very kind of awkward, uncomfortable conversation that you need to have with your neighbor every month. Hey, can you slide me that $20 to split the internet bill, please? That's an uncomfortable conversation to have. By introducing blockchain into the mix, you don't need to pay us and then we pay your neighbor. You can pay your neighbor directly using a really innovative technology that you're seeing blow up all around the world, independent of Open Garden. It's this blockchain technology.
Yeah, very cool. I love the idea of this because my internet and cable provider is kind of crappy, and I don't know, so I could tap into my neighbors that have better connections then in that case.
You could. That's right.
As a follow up or fallback, because sometimes my internet does go down.
That happens for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, my internet's down right now. There's the whole neighborhood is out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's definitely painful when that happens.
Yeah.
So what we think is, as a starting point, many people will be interested in sharing their home internet. We live in a bandwidth-rich environment. The cost of internet, though, in America is pretty high on a purchasing power parity basis. It's a lot cheaper in other parts of the world. And so this is ripe for disruption. Many people, as you pointed out, have more bandwidth than they know what to do with. And so what we're enabling is them to, split that with their neighbors and maybe cut their bill in half.
Very, very cool. So is this going to impact then? So, I've got a set rate with, let's say, Comcast, right? And that provides my cable and my internet service. How would this enable me to kind of cut the cord if I wanted to?
We think so, yes, and not cool. To suggest we're looking to go beat up Comcast, but if you're a subscriber to home internet service and you've got a neighbor in the condo next to you or the apartment unit above you, or if your house is relatively close to your neighbor, then there's really no reason why you need to be paying separately as a subscriber compared to your neighbor. You can share that together. If the Wi-Fi signal can reach into each other's properties, then you have a use case with Open Garden.
But this does require me to have a conversation with my neighbor.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And how are you guys enabling that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There are some contexts in which I don't think the conversation is going to be all that necessary. If you discover that there's an Open Garden hotspot nearby, you can try it out, check it out, and you can see within the experience yourself how much the internet service costs and decide yourself if you want to use it or not. So there are contexts in which you don't really need to have that conversation. We think, for example, Airbnb hosts would be a great starting point because Airbnb hosts have to provide free Wi-Fi to their guests. It's this massively underutilized resource. Guests are not in the unit all the time. And when they're in the unit, most of the time, they're sleeping. And so you've got this resource that a host in America spends around $600 to $700 a year on. And they could buy an Open Garden hotspot, plug it in, and their neighbors around them can just discover it organically, pay them directly, and then offset that bill. We've talked to Airbnb hosts, and they love this idea.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. And so you get paid in a cryptocurrency called OG. That's
Correct.
Pretty cool. Is that like, are people actually using it right now and earning OG? How do we start earning some OG?
Yeah, we want to give OG to a lot of people. So where we're at right now is in a beta program. We've built our protocol and we've put it into a reference application that we built. So you can download our app and turn your phone into a hotspot. The phone is the initial platform that we're launching with. Very soon, we're going to start a beta for our first hardware unit that we're working with a manufacturer on. So that by November, we'll be shipping first hardware unit that can earn you crypto. We internally call it a crypto box. You plug it in and people pay for internet and you earn crypto. Those are the two platforms that we have. So we're in beta right now in the phone app. We're going to be giving away tokens or OG to people who download the app to give them an opportunity to try out phone-to-phone sharing. And there's a bunch of cool use cases there.
Yeah, very cool. So is this an evolution of the FireChat app?
It's an evolution of some of the connectivity capabilities that we built into FireChat and really dates back to the earliest heritage of the company as a networking technology company.
Right. Yeah, we remember that in our previous conversation when we talked about FireChat that it really took off during Burning Man, right?
Yes.
Do you see an application for the Open Garden app at the upcoming Burning Man, which is on the horizon?
So I don't see a huge application for it at a place like Burning Man where there's not very good cellular connectivity. There's virtually no Wi-Fi.
That's
so
right.
There's not a lot of internet sharing to be done. That's part of the purpose of going to Burning Man. A technology like FireChat is better suited for that environment in which you've got, a really, really disconnected group of people.
When you decide to put your Wi-Fi access, into the ether for everybody to use, and they use their phone and they log in, how safe is that for me as the Wi-Fi, intermediary provider? Like it's my house, it's my Wi-Fi, I'm paying for it. How exposed am I to some kind of a threat?
Yeah, so here's one example of a potential threat, and this comes up all the time when we have conversations with people. What if somebody connects to my Open Garden hotspot and commits a crime?
Right.
Maybe makes terrorist threats, buys something on the Silk Road, does something horrible on the dark web. Am I responsible for this? There's really good case law now about public Wi-Fi and the responsibility of public Wi-Fi providers for all of those terrible things. And the answer in the United States is generally that you are not liable. If you're Starbucks, somebody comes into Starbucks and taps on a terms of service and then sends out terrorist threats, Starbucks isn't going to jail over that. One of the benefits of what we're doing is that by using blockchain, there is an auditable trail. So if I'm using someone's internet at a given time and I'm running transactions for every gigabyte or every megabyte of data that's being used, and I do something terrible, there is actually an immutable record on the blockchain that will show that at the time that some terrible act happened on my connection, actually there was a transaction written to the blockchain. There's some good plausible deniability in a paper trail, but as a provider of effectively public Wi-Fi, you're not liable, at least in the United States.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the genesis of moving towards putting this on the blockchain and kind of the original idea and how it's taking shape?
Sure. So a couple of years ago, we made the very difficult decision to pause the work that we're doing on FireChat. And when we did that, it was really because FireChat just wasn't growing. The team had been focused on really trying to go beat up Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and WeChat, and those services exploded and grew past 1 billion users, and FireChat did not.
But FireChat did have in the millions of users at one point, right?
It has over 5 million registered users, but we never got to the point of millions of concurrent, daily or monthly active users. So it reached this sort of plateau, and then we decided to go back into R&D mode and take the core technology and do something with it that would be more broadly usable, that would be bigger. And this is around the time that I became the CEO. We went back into R&D mode and thought making it possible to share messaging peer-to-peer and provide free messaging to people is cool. But what if we could provide internet access to people so they could do more than just send messages? They could do anything. It's a much bigger vision. So we started to build this technology to provide peer-to-peer connectivity. And about a year ago, as we started to get ready to commercialize it with a direct-to-consumer play, we thought about the business model and how we would position ourselves in the marketplace. We didn't want to position ourselves as just another network operator, to be the next AT&T, for example. We wanted to build something in which we're enabling the community to reclaim some of the power imbalance in internet access today. By context, in most parts of the world, and the US is included, there's about 2 to 6 big companies that provide all the internet access in a country. It's very heavily centralized. And that has some upsides, but it has some downsides too. Some of those downsides include the cost of service, kind of high, not very affordable for many people. It's kind of slow. It's not very private because ISPs are able to monitor everything you do, and then they take that data and they sell it to advertisers so advertisers can sell things to you.
Especially things I already bought. Like I'm looking at that item from my brother and I buy it and they keep trying to sell it to me like I already bought it.
Yeah. I just bought a mattress from Purple. How many Purple mattresses do they think I need to buy?
All of them. All of them. Yes.
All of them, right?
I wanted to ask you, as we try to establish this model of using the Wi-Fi thing, I'm trying to think like a step or two ahead. So if I'm a building manager and I've got a 12-story office space with 120 businesses that are in there, we're nicely full. Am I going to try then to consolidate all of the internet access into one packaged bill, and then I'll sell off the surplus? Like there'll be a smart way to say, we're wasting 25% of our internet because everybody's going to have what they need and there's left over, so I'm going to take that and create revenue off of that. Is that a use case you think that makes sense?
I absolutely think that's a use case that makes sense. What we're trying to do here is enable entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. And that starts with one person sharing their internet with their next door neighbor. But it gets bigger in exactly the use case you described. An apartment building owner being able to be the internet service provider to their tenants by using Open Garden to multi-hop internet connectivity through units and provide a lower cost of service for everybody. We think that's definitely a use case. We also think entrepreneurs will try to go out and set up dozens and hundreds and even thousands of Open Garden hotspots and build their own internet service that they're providing. And they provide the technical support. They provide customer support. They help with payment services. There's a role for that entrepreneur in this ecosystem. And I guess that's what we've come to is we're trying to build this as a decentralized service so that anybody can become an entrepreneur, whether it's one hotspot or 10 or even thousands. We're not a man in the middle here. We're not taking a cut of the revenue here. We're providing the protocol and enabling other people to build their business here. And that's really one of the very disruptive things about Open Garden. Yes, we're disrupting network communications, but it's also a disruptive business model. Because we're not building our own network. We're not like Uber saying, my supply side, my driver network is my driver network, and I need to find passengers, demand side, to connect to my network. It's not Open Garden's network. The internet doesn't belong to us either. It belongs to the community. And that's really what we're trying to enable here by building a fully decentralized network. The hotspots interoperate, so I can connect to one Open Garden hotspot here and another one over there seamlessly, easily, with the same wallet. That's fantastic. But Open Garden's not in the middle of any of that. The providers make all the money. And that's really, really key. Now, to do that, so that we're not in the middle, so that the provider gets all the money, we needed a solution that was better than using a credit card or using PayPal to make the payments. Because in those cases, you end up with a model where someone needs to be a trusted person in the middle, collecting the money and then remitting payment to the providers, just like Uber does. Well, you don't have to do that if you use blockchain. And that's why we created our own token.
Very cool. Yeah, wow. And so, well, how are you guys going to make money? If you guys are the protocol, is there a small charge for anyone that wants to create their own hotspot?
Nope. We want the protocol to be free forever. We're not charging for the use of it. Anybody will be able to, in time, download the SDKs, build this into their own hardware. That we're really trying to build an ecosystem around that stuff, build it into their own apps. The use of the protocol, we want to always be free. Mm-hmm. And that part of Open Garden is going down that path. The way in which we make money is not at all in that context. We're non-revenue generating. We're what's called non-rent seeking, to use a crypto term. And that's by design. The way that we create value for our shareholders is through the token. Mm-hmm. We've created this token out of thin air. We sold a whole bunch of it to some investors to help us build the technology, which we've now built. And after distributing tokens to those investors, after distributing tokens to the community for free to get them to try out internet access through what's called an airdrop, at the end of all of that, Open Garden will be sitting on, maybe somewhere around 20% of all the tokens in the economy. Well, if this takes off and we have millions of people sharing their internet and running transactions, the value of the token over time could be really, really material. And that value that has been created sits in the 20% of tokens that our company owns. Mm. So we have a way to compensate our shareholders and the team without having to generate revenue from this. That's the other really disruptive thing that we're doing here. We're disrupting, venture capital. We're disrupting business models by generating no revenue. It's hard to compete against no revenue.
Yeah.
It's just kind of hard to put your head around it, actually. Even like, what? Like, my mind is kind of blown right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
This is the really powerful thing with cryptocurrency and what are called crypto economics or token economics. We're living in a world now where we can create, any of us can create our own currency. And, currencies only have value if people believe they have value. In our case, we think they will believe it has value because it has real utility. They can use it to pay for internet access. And you'll see, thousands and then millions of transactions running over this network with people paying for connectivity. That has value. It has intrinsic value over time. And the bigger the network, the more intrinsic value it has. So, yes, we can peel off, a few million tokens or 1% of our tokens to fund our operations, to compensate our shareholders for their investments. If the value of all the tokens in our economy goes from zero, which it is today because we haven't launched, if it goes to $1 billion when we launch, then I've created enormous value for our shareholders. They've seen a return on their investment. Everybody's happy. At the end of this, it's decentralized. In time, we have no control over the network. The network and the protocol is just out there in the ether. It's operating without us. And we don't have most of the tokens. It's really at least 80% of the tokens or more will be in the hands of the community. And that's the whole intent here, is we're trying to bring the internet back to the community.
If I'm going to be a service provider and I'm going to use excess Wi-Fi to create a business as an entrepreneur, am I charging whatever I want in terms of OG, or is it gonna are we gonna let Adam Smith run this thing with his invisible hand, or how do we set that? And then the other thing is when I go to my boss to pitch this idea and he looks at me like, what are you talking about? You're gonna sell extra internet. What does one do with an OG token, in the near future when they've got 100 of them a month or whatever that number is going to be?
Yep, sure. So the first question about the invisible hand and Adam Smith is that we let each individual provider set the price. So the price for internet access in one place is different from another place. And we want the market to decide, what is it? What do they want to charge? And then consumers to decide, well, what am I willing to pay? Now, you'll be able to see through our protocol and in the app that we've developed, you'll be able to see what other people are charging around you,
right?
And what's a reasonable price. You see this in Airbnb as well. You can see a sliding scale of how much a given unit is running for in San Francisco. So you get this, sense of reasonableness. So that's the way that we've handled pricing. Now, the question of what you can do with OG after you've earned it is a really good one. First of all, we have a premise of zero knowledge of blockchain. We don't want our regular consumers to have to think about blockchain or crypto or wallets or private keys, any of that stuff. We can leave that to the crypto nerds. That's great. But we're trying to build a mainstream consumer service with blockchain as the fabric underneath. But you don't need to know how to manipulate that fabric. So once you've earned OG, think of it as a credit system, as a reward system. Once you've earned it, you can cash it out. And for some people, that will mean cashing it out to their bank account, again, through a fairly complicated set of transactions under the hood, but for the consumer, pretty simple. In some parts of the world, in the developing world, you'll be able to cash out your OG earnings to your cell phone. So if you're, for example, a tea shop owner in Lagos, and you're sharing your internet, so when your patrons come in, they can connect to the internet through your phone and pay you in tiny amounts. People buy the internet in developing countries in really tiny amounts, in 25 cent or less increments at a time. Really works well with blockchain. So that tea shop owner earns 5 cents here from this patron and 10 cents from another for internet access, and until they roll it up into a few dollars. Then they can cash it out. And when they cash it out, they can cash it out using Open Garden to put it into a stored value on their phone, which they can then use to buy more internet access, to buy a data plan, to buy digital purchases like music. And in some parts of Africa, like in Kenya, you can even use that to buy groceries with that stored value on your phone. So we're making OG this asset that you earn that is directly translatable into things you can use in the real world right away without knowing anything about crypto.
Wow.
Wow. Very, very cool. You were talking a little bit about how once this goes live, it will be somewhat of a hands-off approach. People will be able to be their own ISPs. What does that mean for your organizational structure and as a company?
I think it means a lot of optionality. A core part of our team will always be focused on helping to improve the protocol, whether that's us directly hands-on on keyboard coding or running developer relations programs the way the Ethereum Foundation does to help teach the world how to use our protocol. That means working with manufacturers to put our protocol into Wi-Fi access points. That means working with app developers to teach them how to enable their users to get free internet peer-to-peer. So there's a core focus of the company around innovating with the protocol and evangelizing the protocol. And that's the 100% focus of our team right now. In the long run, there could also be adjacent opportunities for Open Garden Incorporated. Separate from the protocol, we could build businesses around the protocol. We could start shipping Wi-Fi devices ourselves with the protocol. We could help build networks ourselves that monetize the protocol. There are many different ways in which the Open Garden Incorporated could grow in different directions. But the protocol is the protocol, and it needs a team focused on innovating and evangelizing it. And for now, that's 100% of our focus.
Fascinating. So is your main go-to-market then to really partner with these OEMs and equipment manufacturers?
Yeah, let me explain a little bit about our go-to-market. Again, we're trying to build an ecosystem around the Open Garden protocol. We've built the protocol. We've put it into a reference app that we built called Open Garden for Android and soon for iOS. We want then to make it easy for any developer to put our protocol into their own app. A great example of that is in the ride-sharing space. So that if you're in an Uber, a Lyft, a Didi, a Grab taxi, anywhere in the world, you get into the back of that taxi, and as a passenger, you can get free internet through the driver's app and phone-to-phone connectivity with something we've already built, so that you've got ride-sharing vehicles providing internet access to all their passengers. That's a great use case. We want to evangelize that to that vertical. There are a dozen other verticals that we want to start evangelizing for this phone-to-phone technology. The second is around hardware. We're going to be shipping a hardware unit later this fall. The first Wi-Fi device, I call it a crypto box, that enables anybody to get access to the internet through their neighbor through this device. But that's really just the first step in the hardware space. We want to use that to demonstrate to big dogs in the hardware space in consumer Wi-Fi that they should be using the protocol too. For free, they're not beholden to us. There's no licensing fees. We just want them to use the protocol, which ultimately drives adoption of our token as well. Then we've got a whole other segment of potential users of the protocol in network operators themselves. Verizon Ventures invested in us last year because they're fascinated by our protocol and can see how it can solve business problems for them as a mobile operator. As a home internet service provider, they provide service through a brand called Fios. So they invested in us, and we've had many operators contact us interested in exploring the use of our protocol too. So that's how you get from thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of app users and hardware buyers to ubiquity around the planet. You get major operators starting to adopt this because it solves real business problems for them. That's where we start to see, the long-term vision of Open Garden realized.
So cool! Wow. Yeah. 5 years from now, you talk about long-term vision. What does Open Garden look like 5 years from now?
I think 5 years from now, our hope is millions and millions of people using this protocol every day, and we get to a state where maybe it's not 5 years, maybe it's 7 or 10 years from now, where people don't really think about who their internet service provider is anymore. You get to a state where the mobile operator or your fixed line operator is potentially pretty opaque to you. It's not really that relevant anymore because you're using peer-to-peer connectivity to connect to whatever is the most available, cheapest, fastest, most private connection possible. That is a target state that we would like to see, in which there's just massive competition for internet access because there's millions of open garden hotspots everywhere. This is a better way to connect to the internet. That's what we would like to see. Can we get there in 5 years? I sure hope so. I'm pretty confident that we can get to millions of people using it by then. And maybe in 10 years, we're at ubiquity. We're trying to build a protocol for the next 20 years. That's really, what we think about when we get up and go to work every day.
Amazing. So cool.
Yeah. There's another part about our vision that I haven't really talked about yet, and that is how this is a really important protocol in parts of the world outside of the US. We've built this so that we can make the internet more affordable because you're sharing unused bandwidth. But we're also adding into our protocol a VPN protocol so that our stack, whether it's on your phone or in a Wi-Fi access point, includes a decentralized VPN. And in simplest terms, what this means is that for me as a consumer, the Open Garden provider can't see what I'm doing because it's VPN. It's tunneled out through that connection point to another Open Garden hotspot somewhere else in the world. Now, if you have millions of endpoints like this that are tunneling traffic in and tunneling traffic out, you're in a position now where the ISP can't monitor your traffic. It's all black box to them. And it becomes censorship resistant such that it's even difficult for governments to monitor what you're doing. VPN services are common in places like China today, but they're not particularly effective because there's typically only a couple of hundred endpoints in those centralized VPN companies. It's like a whack-a-mole game. A new endpoint pops up with an IP address. The government, Great Wall of China, smacks it down. When you have millions of these endpoints on an Open Garden network, this becomes very difficult to stop. And so when we think about a vision for Open Garden in a place like China or in other repressive regimes around the world, you get to a protocol that is cheaper and more private, and through our mesh technology, faster, because you can connect to multiple hotspots. Cheaper, faster, and more private. Becomes unblockable and unstoppable. This is just a better way of connecting to the internet.
Wow. So, yeah, that's crazy. And I mean, because they're like we're starting to see a lot of crackdown. Obviously, China. Google said that they're going to build a special network just for China. But yeah, I mean, I love that the idea of in the future, individuals being able to express their freedom of speech openly and openly travel across the web or visit whatever sites they want to without that fear of being cracked down on.
That's a huge accomplishment if we can get there. And we know we can get there around the promise of making the internet more affordable. And we can certainly make it more private through the introduction of VPN protocols. By making it fully decentralized, when we can pull that off, then you really have changed how people connect to the internet. I like to tell people that the purpose of our protocol is to fundamentally change how people get online. And I think we can get there.
Yeah, it's incredible when you think about all the different things that are going to come into play with this. And then why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want to, one, make money with the extra internet you have, and two, why wouldn't you want to pay a fractional cost to have access to something that you might otherwise have to pay $100 more for? So it's fascinating.
Right. One of the ISPs that we've been speaking to contacted us and said, we're really interested in putting your protocol into our Wi-Fi access points for our home internet service. And my initial thought was, these guys are looking to disrupt themselves. And I think that's pretty smart because they're not the biggest player in the home internet space. And in any one, say, condo building, they've got maybe around 25 to 30% of people subscribing. Mm-hmm. Well, if the protocol is in my unit, in my Wi-Fi access point, but my next door neighbor isn't using this ISP, using the protocol, they can share my internet and discover that ISP service and have kind of an on-ramp to the experience, and maybe even treat it as an upsell to buying the full service from them in time. So they see it as a potential upsell, which is cool, but they also see it as a way to reduce customer acquisition cost because they didn't have to put a box into my neighbor's house. They didn't have to market to them. It's free money. They have a way of getting revenue out of a neighbor without having to have all of that acquisition cost.
Yeah, you've got the incentivization built into the network itself.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So, we're trying to build this thing to be fully decentralized, and we want the community to take it up. But there's a possibility that operators take it up too. I think this is a strong possibility. There are major business problems that this technology solves for them too. I mean, I think in 10 years, this is just all mainstream. I know right now this all sounds like Jetsons and blowing people's minds, but the idea of peer-to-peer connectivity, of mesh connectivity, of shared connections is something that's already contemplated in the mobile communication space through the 5G standard. Right. 3GPP ratified mesh networking as part of the standard. This is all coming. And it from a telecom perspective, it rolls up under a domain that people refer to as heterogeneous networks. At some moment, my phone's connected to the cell phone network. At another moment, it's connected to Wi-Fi and other networks, and it's all seamless. It's a heterogeneous network that I'm connected to. So we're not out in the hinterlands here from a technology perspective or from a radical vision perspective. The industry is moving toward this themselves.
Yeah, so cool. How do you see this impacting, people's behaviors? Like how is this going to make me act differently when I'm, connecting with my friends or family or in my day-to-day?
Well, I mean, our hope is that for regular consumers, this just feels like exactly the same old internet that they were getting before. It's just cheaper and more private initially. We don't want them to feel like there's any extra hoops or it's a different flavor of water necessarily. We want them to feel like this is a thing that I'm already comfortable with. It's just a better version of it. Mm-hmm. If it's private, then I don't think people are going to sit around worried about their neighbor using their neighbor's internet, and maybe their neighbor can see what they're doing online and any of that stuff. It's private. Mm-hmm.
How does one grab or acquire OG tokens so that they can have something to trade when they want to access another network?
Yeah, good question. So this is currently the unsolved problem in the cryptocurrency space. And I think a key reason why you haven't seen a lot of consumer adoption of crypto yet, because you need to be pretty knowledgeable about how to buy it, where to buy it, security, private key management. Oops, I lost my private keys. Now I've lost all my money. So that complexity has really constrained the adoption of consumer crypto. We are looking to solve that problem in our own unique way. The domain area is called fiat to crypto on-ramp. How do I get onto the crypto space with my fiat currency, my US dollars? And for fiat to OG, we've got an internal project called Project Fog, fiat to OG. It's very foggy over here in Oakland.
It's very fitting for the San Francisco Bay Area.
Totally. So with Project Fog, we're going to make it trivially simple for a regular consumer to buy our token, to buy OG. And they can do it by using a digital wallet like PayPal or Venmo, or if they're in China, using WeChat Pay or Alipay, to press a button in the app and say, I want to buy $50 worth of OG. And I'm going to use that to pay for my internet bill to my neighbor next door. They can buy it using PayPal through peer-to-peer transaction. They get matched up directly with somebody in the ecosystem, the Open Garden ecosystem, who already has OG and is looking to sell it. And that peer-to-peer transaction is sort of like using Craigslist or eBay to say, I've got OG and I'm looking to sell it. And a buyer says, I got $50 using PayPal, I want to buy it. All the buyer, who can be completely unsophisticated about crypto, they just have to say in the app, I'm buying $50 worth, and under the covers, our protocol connects the buyer and seller peer-to-peer so that they can send $50 worth of US dollars in PayPal. The seller gets the money and then sends the OG to the buyer. So you have one side of the market, the seller, that is somewhat sophisticated. They already have OG. They know how to acquire it. And there's a relatively small number of people who can do that, but that's all you need. For the buyers of OG, they just need to have a digital wallet like PayPal.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
My mind is officially blown, and just seeing what the future looks like with this stuff, as you're talking, my brain is racing, and that's just, it's such a neat thing. And I just can't tell you how excited I am to know what's going to happen, to see what happens in 5 years. It's just incredible.
So this is, everything I've described is very consumer focused. So as you know, I come from the mobile communication space. We've got a lot of experience in telecom. A lot of the technology that we've got in this protocol is very helpful to operators. Here's an example of how. If you're an operator, you need to sign up customers. That costs money. And then you provision them. It sounds like you're sending them, picks and shovels to go mining somewhere. Carriers call it provisioning. That costs money. And then you create a billing account or a billing ID for that customer, which usually means you're paying a seat license to Amdocs, the biggest carrier billing company in the world. All of this stuff costs money just to create an identity for your subscriber on the network. Well, what our technology does is obviates all of that, because the only thing that you need to connect to the internet with Open Garden is a blockchain wallet, an Open Garden wallet in our case, and proof that it's funded with money, with OG. With our protocol, as long as you've got a wallet that's funded, then you can connect to an Open Garden hotspot. The provider doesn't need to know your identity. They don't need a billing ID. There's no billing system. The blockchain is the billing system.
Right.
Now, from a carrier point of view, what this means is you could have millions of people, IoT devices, machines, cars, all of these things connecting to your network now using this protocol, and you don't have to have a billing system for them. The blockchain is the billing system. The proof that the customer has paid is in an immutable record on the blockchain. You could save billions of dollars for operators by using a technology like this, because you're eliminating Amdocs and billing companies and the need to have an identity on the network. The only thing that matters is, does that endpoint, that person, that phone, that car, that machine, does that endpoint have money, and are they willing to pay? That's it. That's all you need. And in the IoT space, this solves a huge problem, because you've got this huge demand for smart city technology. We're talking about devices that the device itself costs like $5 or less. You're not going to put a SIM card into that device. You don't want to create a billing account and pay Amdocs $1 a year for that, or $5 a year for. You've eliminated all your profit. Well, with blockchain, you can use our protocol, put it into these devices, and the only thing that matters to AT&T or Verizon or Sprint is, does that IoT device have money, and are they willing to pay what I'm charging? And that's what our protocol does. It says, I've got a wallet, it's funded, and I'm willing to pay this much money per megabyte, per gigabyte. You could on-ramp billions of IoT devices at virtually no cost.
Huh. Wow. Well, it really sounds like Open Garden is poised for world domination. You've got the consumer side, you've got the B2B side, and the carrier side. It's pretty awesome. I mean, super cool and very exciting to hear what you've been up to.
Yeah, it's there has not been a more exciting time to be at Open Garden than right now.
Nice. That is so great. Well, is there anything that we didn't cover that maybe we want to have a chance to talk to? We didn't really talk anything about your personal interests or maybe any personal projects that you're interested in blockchain.
The only thing I would ask is maybe a small plug to ask you and your listeners to download our app. Go to opengarden.com. You can download our Android app now, and very soon our iOS app.
When is iOS app coming out?
We are going into beta, I believe, in the next week. And so download the app, because the sooner you download it, the more free OG you're going to get. We're doing an airdrop. We're giving away 1 billion tokens in our economy.
Wow.
To the early adopters, to help reward them for trying out the product and evangelizing it and sharing it with people. So we're giving away 1 billion tokens to give away free internet access to hundreds of thousands of people is our goal as a starting point. So all you need to do right now is download the app.
That's awesome.
I'm doing it right now.
Thank you so much for joining. I know I don't have an Android. Damn. Can I be part of the beta?
Yes,
okay,
people
cool.
can sign up for the beta on our website at opengarden.com.
Okay, we're going to do that, and we will definitely link to everything. So exciting having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time, Pete and Sandra.
Yeah, no worries. And let's have you back on sometime too to talk about it again. It's great. It's really interesting stuff.
Would love to check in once we launch and have some traction and some real world data to share with you.
Yeah, got to get that OG.
Yep.